Howdy y'all, and welcome to another episode of the Dust Deal Deck Trail. Let's talk Commander. So this is one of the first Commander decks that I built, and he's a pretty popular Commander, you see him pretty often. So I built this deck pretty specifically. It's kind of a all your eggs in one basket kind of scenario. It's built around really one card, so if you lose that one card, you'll probably be in trouble for the rest of the game. But it's a pretty fun deck, it works pretty good, so let's take a look. Our Commander is Zur the Enchanter. He's a tricolor. He's white, blue, black. With flying, whenever he attacks, you can search the library for an enchantment card with mana value 3 or less and put it straight onto the battlefield, then shuffle. So, I don't know if y'all watch him, but Post Malone, I know he's got a custom Zur the Enchanter, so he plays with him. So, Commander deck, 99 cards, plus your Commander. I tried to organize this deck in a stack so we can go through it, and I can try and explain exactly what it's trying to do. And our main card is this one, Quest for Ula's Temple. So basically you want to search for this first, or whenever it's safe too, basically. As long as everyone's board isn't massive already or something. So at the beginning of your upkeep, you can immediately look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature, you can immediately put a quest counter on it. If there are 3 or more quest counters on it, then you can put a Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent card from your hand onto the battlefield. So that's at the beginning of all 3 of your opponent's end step as well. Basically this deck is Quest for Ula's Temple, Zur the Enchanter to put it out as fast as possible, and then we have a lot of Proliferate and a lot of enchantments to protect Quest for Ula's Temple. So let's take a look. So great Auramancy, other enchantments you can draw Shroud, but also all your enchanted creatures have Shroud on top of that, so you can search for this. Pentarch Ward, this is basically for the commander. So whenever it comes out, you get to draw a card, but you also get to choose a color, and he becomes protected from that color. And you can choose white, it doesn't remove Pentarch Ward. So it's very good on your commander. You can search this up really quick, and you can make him basically unblockable, or you can search for Steel, which literally, which gives 1/1 lifelink plus 1/1 and unblockable, which literally makes him unblockable. So you can do either one of those. And you really want to search for Thassa, because you can pay 2, and a target creature can't be blocked, so you can use that on Zur as well. But at the beginning of your upkeep, you scry 1. So it's going to help you scry, so you can search for a creature and try and put it on top, so you can get quest counters on Quest for Ula's Temple as quickly as possible. Then you have Phyrexian Arena, so you definitely want this one out early for the card draw. And then we have, so after you get started, if you can get 1 quest counter on it, then you can start proliferating it. So this is a searchable proliferate enchantment. So it's good for, it just taps a creature, doesn't untap, but whenever it enters, then you can proliferate. And we have this one, because, oh my gosh, I hate this card so much. I hate it when it's used on me. But this is for specifically for commanders. So the way this card works is that it just phases a creature out. So it doesn't go back to the command zone, and it doesn't exile it. So as long as this enchantment is out and it targets the commander is gone until this enchantment's gone. So a very good card. So let's take a look at our spells. So the rest of the deck is kind of just support for Quest for Ula. So we have 5 cards that have a Proliferate attached to it that do extra stuff, basically. Then we have a Wizard class specifically for the no maximum hand size, so you can like search this up if you have a Whelming Wave. They can Whelming Wave everything. So this is good at getting rid of tokens, because it exiles them and they don't come back because they're tokens. The Diabolic Visions, it's just so you can look at the top 5 and put them back. It's a scrying, Brainstorm for scrying, Ponder for scrying, and then we also run 4 counterspells, so Counterspell. Spell Rupture, because we have Krakens, Leviathans, they're really big creatures, so this is a really good counterspell. A Redirect, and a Countersquall for non-creatures, and they lose 2 life. And so all 4 of those are also 2 mana, which is really nice. So let's take a look at the enchantments that we can search for. So Prison Sentence, because you can scry 2, and then it also gets rid of a creature. Shelter by Ghost, because this card is absolutely ridiculous. It's a great removal. Seal from Existence is probably the best removal, because it exiles on target non-land, but it also has Ward 3, so it's hard to get rid of. And Detention Sphere, because it's also great at removing groups of tokens. So then our enchantments for creatures, we have Shield by Fate, it's indestructible. Staggering Insight is very good, gives card draw, lifelink, so we can put it on a big old fat creature, and it makes it really good. Gift, because it gives flying, so you have Flying Leviathans, which is a very good card. So then we have some protect enchantments. You have Aura, very good. Propaganda, very annoying to deal with. Necromancy, so we can bring a big creature back if we need to. Brave the Sands is a really good card in this deck because we have such large creatures, so they can actually block an additional creature and it gives them vigilance, so it's good whenever you get started. Rogue class, same thing. It basically gives a menace, so it makes them really hard to block. And then we have Copy Enchant and Mirror Maid, because both of these you can copy an enchantment, or you can copy an enchantment or an artifact. So those are very good enchantments to include in this deck. So let's take a look at our artifacts real quick. Soul Ring, of course, very shiny. Arcane Signet, of course. And we have all 3 of the talismans that match the color. So 2-drop mana rocks. Chromatic Lantern, because it's very good, because we're a tricolored commander. And then I really like Midnight Clock because of the card draw potential with it later. So we won't actually run too many artifacts in this deck. Alright, let's take a look at our creatures. So we have Hannah. So if you lose your enchantment, you can actually return it back from your graveyard, potentially. So it's kind of a must-have in this deck. Oubliette, so if you draw her, it gives 4/4 lifelink, great creature, but also you can start gaining control of little annoying creatures, so she's great. So we have Runo, but he's not actually a Kraken, but he's a flip card. So this is the backside of him, so he becomes a very good Kraken horror. Very good card. So we're also running Obscura because he's just a very good creature whenever you get started and start attacking with him. So then we're running 20 Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents. Just a big old list of the most biggest, baddest creatures that we can find that we can throw out. And they all have great abilities and they're all very powerful. But Spawning Kraken probably being the best one, but they're all just huge bodies. Like he's an 8/8, a 7/7, 6/6. He gives a really good one. So we're also running Icebreaker Kraken, and in the lands I'll show you, but return 3 Snowlands you control to the owner's hand. So that's the only reason, he's the only reason we're running Snowlands in this deck. So let's take a look at the lands real quick. So we have Command Tower, of course. Karn's Bastion, because you can proliferate. We have both of the Tri-lands. Halimar Depths, because it's just like a really good Scry card. We have Scry, all 3 of the Scry temples that match the colors. So we also have the Mire, because you can turn a big old creature. Bog, so you can exile graveyards. And we run both of the lands that enter untapped as long as you control an island. So we're actually only running basic islands in here. And then all of the other 2 colors, black and white, they come from our non-basic lands. So we have all 3 of the bounce ones that you can bounce a basic land, but it adds 2 mana. And then at the end here, we have all 6 of the potential snow lands that we can be running that are non-basic. And then we're also running 9 basic snow-covered islands. So we have 15 total snow-covered islands, which is about half of the lands in this deck are snow lands, and the rest are non-basic lands. So here's how this deck is supposed to run. So basically, you want to try and get out Zur as fast as you can. If you don't actually draw your most important card, Quest, for Ula's, you want to get Quest out as soon as possible so you can start stacking counters on it. So as soon as you get Quest for Ula's Temple out, you're going to want some protection from it with Greater Auramancy. And then you're going to want to throw some good enchantments on your commander so you can keep popping out enchantments. But after you actually get Quest for Ula's Temples out, he's actually not that important anymore. But he is really good for like control. So you can search for things like Shelter by Ghost or Seal from Existence, so you can exile your opponent's non-land permanents. So then you want to also search for a Thassa and your Phyrexian Arena to give you a great card draw in Scry. After you Scry, and you find that one creature that you need to get 1 quest, then you want to start proliferating as much as possible, as quickly as possible. So you're going to want to search for a Mesmerizing Dose and just throw it on a creature and give yourself that proliferate. But then this card is also very good at getting rid of commanders. So then as soon as your Quest for Ula's Temple has 3 quest counters on it, then you're just going to want to throw out as many large, very powerful creatures as quickly as you can and give your opponents the beatdown for the win. So let's talk a few cards that I didn't actually include in this deck, and, well, here's why. So the Raging Isles, I didn't include him in here because he's just not quite big enough. He's just not quite powerful enough to include in here. Obviously, he has the most defense out of pretty much any Leviathan, but his sheer damage is just not quite good enough. The Pearl Lake Ancient. So I did actually have this card in here previously, but I took him out or replaced him with a different one because with the quest for the Ula's Temple, we don't actually cast anything. So his flash ability is kind of useless because with the quest for Ula's Temple, you just place it on the battlefield. So he's just not quite good enough to include in this deck. I replaced him with a different card. So the Moon Kraken. So I did actually have him in here previously too, but I replaced him because just like with the Pearl Lake Ancient, you don't actually cast anything. So casting spells that cost 6 or more, we don't actually do that very often. Not often enough to actually make this guy worth it. So I actually just replaced him with a creature that was an 8/8, so it's a little bit bigger, and his ability was a little bit better. Kraken of the Straits, he's a really good card, but in this deck, it's a tri-colored. We actually only have 9 islands, so the potential of actually having enough islands to make this guy worth it is very, very low. I usually only have 2 or 3 islands out, so I just would rather have something bigger than actually trying to make this thing work. The Benthic Behemoth, now this is a really good card, but in this deck, I don't include anything that gives his island walk. So I could actually include this card, Spreading Seas, but it would take up an enchantment slot in the deck that I didn't really want to give up. It's not really worth it to include Spreading Seas, this one enchantment for 1 card in this deck that I may or may not ever see again. He may just get lost in the deck. So it's not quite worth it. And there are like many, many other Octopus, Leviathan, Serpents, all these really big creatures that I could include in here. Y'all should definitely let me know down in the comments which ones I should include or which ones we should really take a look at again, because there are so many great options options. But I'll leave it down in the description, a list of everything we actually did include. Alright, so land tax. This card, simply, we just don't need it. It's a great card, but in this deck specifically, we just don't really need the land because we actually don't cast much stuff. We just place it with Quest for Wheel's Temple, so we just don't need as much mana. It's just not really necessary. All Light Glitters and Ethereal Armor. I didn't include these in the deck because it's not really what the deck is for. So obviously, Zur the Enchanter is a really popular enchantment commander. I'm not trying to run a bunch of enchantments in this deck. I'm using him specifically as a tutor to grab Quest for Wheel's Temple. So these two cards, they're just not really necessary. So I actually rather included this one, Braving the Sands, because we have really big creatures, and this gives the opportunity to actually block 2 creatures, and it gives them vigilance. So it like really ups multiple creatures that we could potentially put out versus just enchanting 1. It's just not quite what this deck does. So Pentarch Ward, we actually did put this in here. I do like it more than like this card, Diplomatic Immunity, or this card, Spirit Mantle, or this card, Aqueous Form. So I put this one in here specifically for the color, and it gives card draw, versus Diplomatic Immunity doesn't give it the unblockable potential of color protection. Spirit Mantle only protects it from creatures, so he's still vulnerable to removal spells. And Aqueous Form gives neither, it just makes him unblockable. I just like Pentarch. Personally, I like this one better, but let me know down in the comments which one do you like better. So I actually originally had Curator's Ward in here. This is a great card because it's perfect. I just throw it on top of my quest card, but I actually just upgraded, so I just included a greater Auramancy. So great card. I just not including Curator's Ward anymore. It got replaced. So this trio, Imprison the Moon, I don't even know how to pronounce this thing, Oubliette, and Darksteel Mutation. So I actually did have Imprison in the Moon in here, but I actually replaced it with the middle black card, Oubliette. I'm just going to call it Oubliette. It has no downside compared to Imprison the Moon gives them a basic land. And Darksteel Mutation in this deck, we have really big creatures and a lot of them don't have trample. So I don't want to give them indestructible blocker that could chump block my really big creatures all the time. So I didn't include Darksteel Mutation and I didn't include Imprison the Moon. So Ghostly Prison, we are running Propaganda, but I took Ghostly Prison out because we don't need it. So I actually did include both of these cards instead. Because both of these, if I need to, I can actually copy Propaganda. So it'd give us another copy. So Ghostly Prison, it just wasn't needed. I just don't need a 4th potential copy of this card. Rhystic Study, everyone's favorite, and Smothering Tide. I didn't include either one of these because you can't search for Smothering Tide. It's a 4-drop, and Rhystic Study is super expensive. So I just didn't want to buy it. I'll be completely honest. So Rhystic Study is just not in this deck. So same with these really overpowered like Mana Drain, Fierce Guardianship. I didn't include these counters in here because I didn't really have space for more counters in this deck. We already have 4 in here. We just don't really need them and they're very expensive. I just didn't want to buy them, honestly. So all these tutors, first of all, I didn't really want to pay for them. Obviously, they're very expensive. And second, I actually don't really need tutors in this deck. What I really am trying to do is use my commander to tutor out the one card that I really need, which is Quest for Wheel's Temple. So after I get Quest out, I actually really don't need a tutor anything else. All the other enchantments in this deck are kind of support for trying to remove things or control the board state or trying to protect really important pieces that I have. It's not really necessary to tutor anything else after that. So I just don't have any tutors in this deck. Alright, so same with board wipes. I do technically have 2 in here. I have Whelming Wave and Disorder in the Court. I don't really need any board wipes, so I have enough control in this deck that I can get rid of most large groups of like tokens, or I can get rid of really large single threats with removal. Instead of trying to like get rid of everything, I just kind of protect myself with something, so I just throw out Propaganda, and I can copy it if I need more help or support with that. But other than that, I just have to rely on my really big Leviathan stuff to actually fight or defend off any other creatures, because they're usually going to be bigger than everyone else's creatures, more threatening. So if they're actually coming at me, then especially with like Brave the Sands and it gives them vigilance, we're going to win that trade. So it's just not really that important to include any board wipes that, well, I'm probably not going to draw anyway. Maybe, but I just don't have them in here. We'll take a look at one more card, the Divining Top. Okay, I really want this card. I really need this card. It's so much better than any other type of scrying thing I have in this deck. I was a fool. I did actually have a copy, and I sold it off. I should have kept it, but right now I just don't have a copy of Divining Top, even though it's literally perfect for this deck. It's so much better than Ponder or Brainstorm, but I just don't have one. So there y'all have it. So that's how I built Zur as a commander. Y'all should definitely let me know in the comments down below if y'all have built Zur as a commander as well, and if you built him a little uniquely as well, with a specific mechanic or a specific card that y'all had in mind. But y'all make sure you like, subscribe, and turn that notifications button as well, so y'all don't miss the next pack cracking video. And thanks so much for walking down the old dusty deck trail with me again, and we'll see y'all next time.